we give names to everything, and in English we have this name, a tree, and with the name comes a certain meaning, and that meaning, I feel, gets in the way of really knowing what a tree is. Because when you ask people, what is a tree, they will say, of course I know. It's something that has a trunk and branches and leaves and roots. And also, what is a forest? Well, yeah, it's a place where the trees live. But is it really? What really is a tree? Maybe I wonder, what would be if we were to not look into any books, any sources about trees and forests? What if we were to discover for ourselves what is a tree, what is a forest? How would we go about it? How would we make a relationship with a tree or with the forest? Would it be different to how we make relationships with people? Or would we take time to really be with a tree, come back to it at different times of the day, different times of the year? So spending time together, and then rather than using our intellect, maybe we would use all our senses. We would touch, and maybe we would nibble on the leaves to have the taste. Maybe we would really look at the different shades of the bark. We would sit with our back to the tree and see how it feels. We would listen. And out of that, something might arise in our feelings that would be a different kind of understanding. And that understanding might take us somewhere else in our relationship with the trees and also with forests. Maybe that different kind of understanding would help us see them in a different way and treat them also as fellow living beings, not just as objects that help us build houses, that help us make paper. And what is a tree? I don't think we can ever give a complete answer, but if we understand that it's a web of relationships which includes so much more, so much life into that web, then we would probably question our assumptions that we can plant a forest. I don't think we can ever plant a forest. A forest takes a long time to establish. When we plant trees, they are plantations where the trees grow at the same time in conditions very, very different to the ones you find in a forest. They don't have the old trees around to guide and educate them. And the recent research shows that trees learn from each other. Trees are incredibly social beings. They exchange information. Parent trees also support their young children trees by establishing connections with mycorrhizae, with the fungal networks, and channeling nutrients and vital information to their children to support their growth through those fungal networks. We are learning amazing things about trees, and our understanding is changing. We are beginning to understand things about trees that challenge our perceptions. The latest research tells us that trees communicate through electric impulses that they generate in their roots. They also communicate through smell. They send chemicals through the air and other trees can perceive them. And they communicate with insects who might be attacking them by changing the chemistry of their leaves to ward off those attacking insects. And as we are looking differently at trees, we are starting to see more things. When I was a small child, I often spent time with trees. I didn't know their names, but I knew that the bark of one tree always felt warm, and it felt rough to the touch. And later I learned that this was oak. Oak is a really warm tree where you can feel supported by it on a cold day. Just lean against the oak and your whole back will feel warmer. And I discovered as a small child that there was another tree and it always felt cool. And so on a hot day, after running around, I would come and hug this tree, and later I learned that it was beech. Beech has a very different bark, smooth and always cold. So I didn't have a glass of cooling water to drink. I would find a beech tree to cool myself down. And oak is one of the trees that supports so many other beings. In this country, in the UK, they say that oaks support over 300 different species of birds and insects and animals. Magpies plant oaks. They bury their seeds deep in the ground to later find them, and often they forget, or they bury more than they need to find. And that's how new oak trees often appear. There are different ways in which people perceive nature and relate to it. And we see that very clearly. We see that in the confrontation of people who come together and form environmental organization or nature protection organizations. The reason they come together and do that, because other people who might see trees purely for their economic value, for their benefit to businesses, and take action that lead to cutting down sometimes pristine forests or second growth forests. And there is a clash. There's a clash in a way how we perceive what nature is. And I personally feel that as long as there is a divide in our perception, if we see nature, in the sense trees, as something other than ourselves, and something that, for whatever reason, we have the right to use, that perception will lead to destruction. Clearly, trees have a different form to ours. They look different. But we are not just the form. The form, the body, is only one part of what we are, and the same for trees. But the essence of trees and human beings and insects, the essence is life energy moving through. And also, it is essential that everything is in relationship with everything else. So if we take something out of that relationship, we disturb the whole web, and we suffer, and everything suffers. So how do we change that way of seeing? How do we change that perception? I don't think we can do it through the intellect, because understanding with the mind doesn't create that deep change that simply means we live in a different way. I would suggest that by remembering what it means to be in relationship with trees, and most of us know it from childhood. Most of us had the opportunity to climb trees, to play with acorns and conkers, to sit with the trees. Even before we started reading any books, we had a connection with trees, and we need to go back to that connection, and we need to allow children of today to have that connection, to climb trees, even if that means that that might fall down. Hopefully, they'll be okay and they'll learn. It's essential that we use our own physicality, the sense of touch and smell, and our whole feeling body to relate to those differently looking bodies of trees, to find out that we share the same essence of life energy moving through at very different paces. The oldest human being on this planet is probably around 115, 20 years old. The oldest tree living today in Sweden is 9,500-year-old spruce. Our time scales are so different. We find it hard to comprehend trees and their life cycles. And yet, we share the same moving life energy. And when we go beyond the divide of our form being different, we might just discover that we have a lot more in common with trees than we ever thought we had.